All right, I think we can kick this off then. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's annual salary planning training session for people leaders. For those of you who don't know me, I am Owen Verzella. I'm on the corporate compensation team. I'm a comp analyst, and I'm here with the rest of my team today, Kathy Malares, Nicole Orhotsky, and Chris Ballard. They will be monitoring the chat, so feel free throughout the session to ask any questions you have, and one of my team members will probably stop me and we can discuss. Here's our agenda for today. So we will cover the following. First, we'll provide an overview of compensation management for you. Then we'll look at the timeline together and overview key areas for this audience. And then we'll perform the steps in People Connect that are relevant for people leaders. We'll do a live demo in the system. Hopefully you guys are excited for that. Now we'll first talk about some of the basics before we get into the timeline and our demo in People Connect. Now you might be wondering who is eligible for a merit increase this fiscal year. This would be any full or part-time employees who are regular employees in an active status. Anyone who transferred mid-year or was promoted or had a lateral job change will also be eligible for full merit at the manager's discretion. And you also might be wondering who is excluded from the process. This would be any union employees, anyone who was hired on or after July 1st of this year, or any employees who are on leave of absence. If there's any other jobs that you're wondering, specific jobs that are ineligible or not, just reach out to the comp team. Happy to clarify. Next, we will dig into the annual salary planning merit guidelines. So we have our annual salary planning merit guidelines. This is going to be, like Marcus said, an important time of the year. And specifically, this is the time to differentiate pay based on performance, which is the practice of providing better performing employees with above average increases compared to their peers and to the merit budget. In your planning forms, the comp module, you will be provided with merit guidelines based on the approved merit budget, the employee's performance rating, and the current salary position and range. And please note the merit budget has not been approved yet. We'll probably have that later next week. It'll be before October 1st at the latest. You'll also notice in your planning forms the guidelines for any employees who were hired after the start of this fiscal year, so October 1st, 2023 and later, or later. It will be prorated based on their hire date. And as managers, you can deviate from the guidelines that are set out in People Connect for you, as long as you remain within budget. Quickly, we'll talk about the below minimum guidelines. This is going to vary by business unit, but this is just a general statement here. Employees with a current salary that falls below their pay range minimum are eligible for an increase to the minimum if your budget allows. This next topic is a little newer for some business units, and we have a slide dedicated to it next. This is at or above max guidelines. Again, newer concept for some, but the idea is that any employee whose current salary is at or above the pay range maximum may receive an above max one-time lump sum payment in lieu of a merit increase. And similar to the merit increase guidelines, there's going to be above max guidelines, which are going to be based on the employee's performance rating. All right, so to cover this
Owen,
little,
can I
answer
a quick question? So that
Sure.
is obviously brand new, right?
Yep.
For all of us that have been here for a long time. So will there be something in People Connect that'll flag that? Will we get an email separately? Like, how do we receive notification that that's the case?
So good question. We will take a look at that in the demo, and you'll see if we enter a salary increase for someone that takes them that takes them above the pay range max, it's going to move. So the merit increase will cap at the top of the salary range, and the remainder will move into the above max column. You'll be able to see it in the comp module.
Oh, and one additional question, just backing up a little bit more. You said any new hires after October 1st
Mhm.
would not be included. However, when we have internal candidates who accept a new position, and if that's after October 1st, I was under the impression that we should include their merit in that offer because they would not get the performance incentive.
Was that referring to, good question, is that if someone transfers mid-year into and accepts another internal offer after after the start of the
Not
year?
mid-year, but I was in like,
Mhm.
from what I understood, there's a blackout period of, from October 1st until the end of the review period.
Yep.
So, well, is that correct that they would not get a performance like increase, that it should be included in the offer for the new position?
Let me think about that. Sorry, I'm wondering if maybe you could rephrase.
Yeah, so when you have an internal candidate moving into a new position, and it's taking effect October 1st, after
Mhm.
like October 1st.
So the start of this new fiscal year,
Yes, correct.
they will still be getting merit.
They will still get a merit.
I
Okay.
was I was referring to if you're hired after after 10/1 of this prior fiscal year, that the guidelines will be prorated based on how long you were here.
Gotcha. Okay. Thank you for
But
clarifying.
is that what? Just to be clear, so is that true? You transfer with a pay increase to a different role, then after July 1st, I was always pretty certain that did not that you were not available for merit in that case.
This
So what you're
year,
saying?
I believe that was the case in the past. This year, managers have the discretion to award a full
Okay,
merit increase.
I just wanted to ask again, just because I was so certain that that was the case. So, all right, I got you. So previous years, yes. Moving forward, different. Gotcha.
Yes, fair question. All right, so to cover this a little bit more, I mean, I think that question I received sort of answered this, but if you have an employee whose pay is going, if you're going to enter an increase that exceeds the pay range max, the system will automatically leave the merit increase at the top of the salary range, and it won't go over um, the max, and the excess amount will move into a separate column called above max one-time lump sum. And important to know that you will have read-only access to this field, to the above max field. So while while the excess amounts will transfer for you with no issue, you'll need to work with HR or compensation if any manual adjustments are needed to that column. Now we'll talk a little bit about the budget. Every year, the comp team reviews things like current business conditions, the external labor market, a few other things to determine the annual salary planning budgets for each upcoming fiscal year. These recommendations are reviewed and approved by the comp committee and executive leadership. This year, you as managers will each receive a merit budget. This is money that is allocated to you to increase the salaries of your employees based on performance. So obviously the the merit awards are going to come from this budget, and above max one-time payments are from the merit budget as well. We have a note here about pay adjustments. Also, the time of this is the time of year to address non-performance pay actions, things like retention concerns, um, internal equity, high potential. You as manager will have read-only access to this field, so please work with your respective HR leaders on any necessary updates. And they'll partner with leadership, and once leadership approves, your HR leaders will come to compensation and we will enter them on their behalf. All right, now we'll talk a bit about on-cycle promotions. For any on-cycle promotions this year, please work with your HR leaders. They will submit a ticket with the following. that you're going to need to have a sum of the promotional and merit increases and attached leadership approvals. You won't need to worry about any of this part, but for informational purposes, this ticket is going to go to our HR data team, and assuming the approvals are in place and they have what they need to enter the promotion and merit record, HR data management will enter the record in People Connect effective 10/1. It's going to be one record that won't show the breakdown between the merit and the promotion because we can't do two separate records on one date. But please note that if it's a promotion that entails a FLSA exemption status change going from non-exempt to exempt or vice versa, we'll need to have a 10/7 job change effective date because we can't change that during the middle of a pay period. But no worries, the pay increase will still be effective 10/1. So this means that any employee who receives an on-cycle promotion in addition to a merit increase, we're going to be removing them from the comp module once we hear from HR data that the record has been entered, or we hear from HR leaders. All right, we're almost ready to jump into our timeline. Let's talk quickly about the employee change blackout period. What this does is it imposes a freeze on the processing of any employee change while the salary planning process is open. That means any changes processed during this time will cause any pay increase via the salary planning process to error out and not complete for the employee. And important to note, it's going to last from the start of the new fiscal year, October 1st, and it will end on November 22nd, which is actually our merit payout date. Okay, now we'll jump into our timeline. I want to let everyone digest this for a minute, but you'll notice these first 4 steps here. These first 2 are going to be most important for managers, I would say, during this process. So on Monday morning of October 7th, you as managers will be able to see your planning forms in People Connect, and you will have 1 week to submit your merit increase recommendations for your teams to your managers for them to review the following week. One thing to note here, if for some reason you aren't able to complete your form and send to your manager +1, all forms will automatically route to your managers at the end of the week. Then this next step is going to be for manager +1 review and approval. So they will look at the worksheets that are sent to them, and they can either approve them and send them to the final review step for HR and compensation and business leaders to look at, or they can send it back to you as a manager and say, hey, we need you to take one more look at this. Similar to the previous step, these will automatically route to final review if they're not completed. Then in this final review step, there's going to be 1 week for HR to review all recommendations. And you're still going to be involved in the process here. The only difference is you as managers won't have edit access anymore to your worksheets, but you'll still be able to see them. We can show you how to do that. And that means that if there's any changes that are needed to your forms, maybe you were out Thursday, Friday, and your form routed automatically to the next step, or you entered a 4 instead of a 5% and you want to change it, you'll want to reach out to your respective HR leaders or to compensation. Then we will take 1 week. The compensation team will review, audit, check for outliers, make sure we're within budget, those sort of activities. And then here's the next big one for managers. November 4th is when we release statements to you. So this is when you can start having your performance and merit conversations with your employees. We're giving you until November 20th to have these conversations, but one thing that is very important to know is in order for our team to meet the payroll processing deadlines and pay merit increases on time to employees, we need to start publishing back merit increase details in People Connect as early as November 13th. So there is a chance that merit increase details will be visible to your employees on that date. So we highly encourage you to have your conversations on the earlier side of this period here. And I know we're talking about salary planning, but just as an FYI with those on the call who have bonus eligible employees, those statements will be released on November 21st to you and paid out on December 6th, except Mountaineer is going to be a little different. It'll be 1 week behind. And November 22nd, we have a big day. The employee change blackout period will end, and employees will have access to their performance ratings and merit statements in People Connect on that date, and they will be paid out their merit. Any questions about the timeline? I know that I threw a lot at you there.
I have a question on the,
Sure.
when you said the blackout period ends on November 22nd and that the employee has access, but when we go over their information, we have our conversations with them, will they
Mhm.
not have access to sign off on it at that time?
They will be able to during, yes, they will be able to.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Yep. Okay, we are almost ready for the demo. Just wanted to cover those first couple of steps that I talked about in the calendar before we jump in. The key areas for you are going to be in purple. Really, most importantly, the most two, planning and allocation is, all of you as managers are going to complete this step, and review planning, most or some of the people on this call will be participating in this as well. And everyone here in final review will still be able to see your planning sheets, even though you can't edit. So as I previously mentioned, for final review, if there's any edits needed to your forms, just reach out to your HR leaders or compensation. Okay, that's all I have here in the slide deck for you. I'm going to reshare my screen in a minute, and we'll walk through a live demo in People Connect. Do we have a question? I think I see it. Hand icon. I don't know if we answered that already. All right, we can move along with the demo then. Can everyone see the People Connect landing page here?
Yes.
Okay, great. So to start salary planning, we'll log into People Connect. We'll be on the landing page, and to navigate to compensation, we will click on this home dropdown and select compensation. You also might see it under For You here, I Can. But we'll mainly want to use this one because I know there were some issues with performance and they weren't showing up here. This compensation in the dropdown will always be there for you. But before I go there, I just want to explain how this exercise will work and what I'll be doing and showing you. For this exercise, we'll be using fake employees, and I'm logged in as a manager right now, Sam Smith, and I'm going to enter merit increase recommendations for my team. And after entering the recommendations, I will log in as Sam's manager, and then I'll have the option to either review and either approve or reject the form and send it back to Sam. So I go to home, compensation. And when a form is in that, so October 7th to the 11th, you should see in your inbox, each of you will have a planning form. This will contain all of your direct reports who are merit eligible. So I'll click in my planning form. And from left to right, we'll see the following information. we'll see things like employee info, job info, our performance rating, pay info, our current salary. And then these are the merit guidelines that populate based on your range penetration and your current salary and performance. And then over here is this, yeah, this is where your input will be required. For final salary, these are all a calculation of what is entered here. And if you'll notice, just pointing this out, I had a note about proration earlier. We can see that Tammy Thompson started after the start of the fiscal year. So she started on January 8th. So we had this set to 4%. So if based on her, she's in the middle of the range and she met objectives. So we set this to 4%. So we know that the proration worked because it's only 2.92 there. Some things that you can see in here are the budget for your team. Based on the recommended increase amounts, this took us over budget because we had this set up to be 4% of everybody's salary, regardless of their performance. And one thing that we can do, I mean, some of you may have more direct reports, but we can look at this line by line, and we can even filter by employee here. If we just want to look at Bob. Okay. And one important thing to remember here is that the filters are, I don't know what you want to call them, sticky filters. They're persistent. So if you save and leave this form, the same filters will be there when you return. Can be a little confusing at times, but if you need any assistance with the filters, the comp team is happy to help out. So let me filter this back on my whole team. And just a note here, I'm over budget. So if I want to send this to the next step, it should tell me that I'm exceeding. No, it doesn't tell me I'm exceeding the budget. But one thing I shouldn't be able to do as a manager, whether I go above or below these guidelines. So if I want to do a 7% increase, it's going to tell me outside of the guidelines, please provide an explanation. I won't be able to move this form forward unless I enter a comment of justification. Okay. I'm going to change this back to a lower percentage. And I'm going to send this to my manager, and then I'll have the option. This will be good for anyone who's a manager +1 to see what it looks like, how to approve or send it back. Actually, it's always best to save, send to approver. So before I log in as Sam's manager, if we look here, it's no longer in my inbox because I just routed to the next step. So it's en route. I can still access it, but I can't make any more edits. So at this point, if you made a mistake and said, oh, this should be a 4.5, you'll want to reach out at this point in the process. You'll want to reach out to your manager +1. In the manager plus one step, we'll do the same thing. We'll go to this home drop down. Compensation. And I actually have Sam Smith's. This is what we're looking for, but Aaron has his own planning form in here for his direct reports. But this is where we can review planning means the manager plus one step. So we'll look at that form. We can look at the budget. We can see the same thing here as we could in the manager step, and we can also make edits to the form. You can either make edits or send it back to the manager to make their own edits, whichever you prefer. But if you're comfortable with what the manager below you submitted, after reviewing, you can send this to comp admin. And at this point, it's going to be for HR and compensation and business unit leaders to review. And now you'll see that that form is no longer with Aaron right now. It's no longer with me. I can still see it, but I can no longer make edits. So at this point, I'll need to connect with my respective HR leader or compensation if I need to make edits to my form. All right, those are the biggest things I wanted to show you. Do we have any questions, anything else you wanted to see?
Oh, and you have a couple raised hands in the room. I think
Sure.
Mary Ellen's might have went up first.
Okay,
So, Ellen, it's Mary Ellen. I
Hey.
thought I saw you change the top person, Bob, I think, to
Mhm.
4% and save it, and it looks like it came through to the manager at 5.
what I think I did actually, I think I hit cancel instead of save,
Okie
which is a
dokie.
good idea to, before you hit send to the manager plus one, always hit save before.
Looks like Gina had a question as well, Owen.
Go for it.
So if you have multiple managers underneath you, are you
Yep.
only able to see their one team at one time, or is there a way to see their direct reports collectively if you wanted to take a whole
Good question,
collective view of
yes.
the entire team? Yeah.
Yeah, so if you do have, 2 or 3 levels of direct reports below you, there is a way to see it. We actually can look at it here. So forms is for an individual manager's planning sheet. Executive review is where I can see anyone who's in my hierarchy. So I'm Aaron right now. There's going to be these 3 employees. We'll do salary planning. There's only going to be one more employee that shows up, actually. We'll see here because Aaron has one direct report, Sam Smith, who I was earlier. And then we have the 3 employees who report into Sam Smith. So right here, I'm seeing 2 levels of direct reports, and any manager will be able to do the same. Now, since this form is already routed to, since these forms were routed to the next step, as a manager, I can't make any edits here. We need to reach out to compensation or HR at this point.
Okay, gotcha. Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other hands or? any
There's another
questions?
one,
I
Ryan.
had a question.
Hey, go for it.
Hey, Owen, this is Ryan. I'll go ahead and ask my question. If I have somebody that's being promoted at the end of the year and HR recommends like a 5% salary increase or the promotion, and then they also exceed expectation, and so how do we treat those? Would the promotion go into effect first with a 5% increase and then another increase, or would it be jumbled into one?
So those are good question. Those are all going to be, if someone's getting promotion and a merit increase, that's all going to be handled outside of the comp module. So what we compensation and the HR data team need to know is what is the sum of the merit plus promotional increase? But as far as the merit budget, you'll see in the comp module, there'll be, if that person receives an increase outside of this process, their salary or percentage of their salary won't be included in this merit budget here. This budget only reflects who's in the module.
Got it. Thanks, Owen. Appreciate it.
Welcome.
I'm sorry, I
Another
can't
hand
raise my
up.
hand. I'm not driving. I'm driving. So I had a question. I have employees at each of the business units. So I have Marias, Energy Services, and Utilities. Do
Yep.
each of my employees have their own budget? Or is it one budget for my entire team?
It's gonna be one budget for your entire team.
Okay.
Yep, it'll be a percentage of each employee's salary. Okay, I think we might have a couple more.
Sure, I have a quick question. So right now I have 10 reviews sitting for, I guess, approval, employee plus one, and we were told not to do anything yet. So when we do these modules, will that automatically complete those? Or do we do these modules, then go back to the review and complete the reviews themselves?
Do you mean which should you do first, your own planning, or for the review and for this review step of the manager plus one?
Well, my manager did her reviews and she sent them to me. So I have all her employee plus one reviews sitting in my queue. Then we got an email that said, do not approve those until the salary modules come out. So when do we approve the reviews, before or after we do these salary planning?
Oh, for performance, that should be done before.
And we'll get an email that tells us that, now supervisors can approve them because they actually feed this data. That's where the rating is pulling from. So it has to be done first.
Oh, okay, because we were told
Yeah.
not to do it. So there'll be a new email coming out telling us then to do it. All right, got you. Thank
Yes,
Yeah,
not-
and Jen, do you know when that's coming?
I don't know. I'll have to follow up with the performance team.
Yep, it'll definitely be before October 7th because that's when we're pulling performance ratings as of.
Yeah, Jen, it's Kyle. If I can, we're doing calibrations with all of the leadership teams over the next 2 weeks. So once those are completed, then we'll communicate back to all the managers that the ratings are final, and then you can move it up to that next step. So more information to come, but that'll happen over the next 2 weeks.
And during that time, if we're not changing their calibrations or their actual recommendations on like exceeds or met or not met some, are we still able to change verbiage in the actual review as long as we're not changing those ratings during that time period?
Yes, I believe you can still edit the comments.
Perfect. Thank you.
I had a question as well, if I can. Maybe I missed this, but is there somewhere on the screen where you see your total pool, the pool of merit you have, and so you can see as you're working the merit inputs,
Sure.
how much
So-
of your pool you used?
So right here, I'm at in the top right, I have budget. I'm in executive review right now, but I can still see this if it's just the planning sheet for my individual team. But this is the pool. This is a percentage of each employee's salary. This will show me what I spend and what I have left. Now, this is already past. This is already in the step of HR, so I can't make edits here. But if I were to edit one of these fields here, merit, This is dynamic. It's going to update automatically.
That was going to be my next question. If it's does it update with inputs or after you save? So it updates with every input. Okay.
Updates. Yep. No need to even save. It'll do that. And when I am in executive review, if I filter on, just 3 employees, it's this budget available will turn from something like 10,000 to 7,000. If I filter out one of these employees. So it updates, the budget is based on the 4 users showing.
Thank you.
Yep, great question. Okay, that's all I really needed to show you guys. If you have any other questions, anything you want to see, or any questions about the slide deck we covered earlier, happy to answer.
Is the timeline for the manager review and the manager plus one review different?
The timeline, well, the manager plus one review is going to be 1 week after the manager planning step. But I mean, if you're a manager and you send your form to your manager plus one on, Wednesday or Thursday of that week, if you get it done on the earlier side, your manager plus one technically has a few extra days to do that step. But yes, it's going to be 1 week for each, but 1 week apart.
Okay, appreciate it.
Yep.
Owen, there's
I
a
have a
question
question.
from Brooke Smith first.
Okay, great.
Hi, Owen. Just wondering if we have an employee that's not at the minimum of their salary band, how does that work? Will they be bumped to the minimum and then receive a merit increase? I know there was a brief mention on one of the slides about this, but I just wanted a clarification of how that will work.
I know it's going to vary by business unit, but they're assuming, really depending on their performance rating, what is recommended, but also that might be a case where a pay adjustment might be warranted. So if you notice an employee or some that need if you're going to be spending too much in merit and maybe there's an internal equity issue of them being too low below the pay grade minimum, that might be something to talk about. But not necessarily everyone who's below minimum is going to be or can be brought up to the minimum.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I have a question. As we're doing this merit increase and change, we can go in and change. Say we want to give somebody 6% instead of 4% or 5.5%. Is there a way that we can save it and not send it off until we go through everybody and see where we're at budget wise?
You're able to save your form and come back to it without sending to the next step.
Okay.
And again, there's going to be 1 week after the manager plus one step for HR and business unit leaders to review the process, look for any outliers, see how we're doing with budget, and then the compensation team will take a few days too.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep. Kathy, do we see any other hands or
Well,
anything in the chat?
yeah, Bill Wilt is asking for the timeline for the manager review and the manager plus one review. Maybe you can show the slides, Owen.
Yes.
Yeah.
And this slide deck, this recording of the session, and I have some other materials that's more of a step-by-step guide in navigating People Connect, sort of what we went through for the demo, but something you can read. will all be available on the People Leader portal. A link will be sent out. But yes, these first two steps, manager planning, this is the planning and allocation step, manager plus one, review and approval. The first 2 weeks of the process.
All right, one last question. If you do under the 4%, do you have to put comment of why you're going under, or is it just if you go over the 4%?
If you're, yes, good question. If you are outside of guidelines, either going above or below the guidelines, it's going to make you enter a comment.
Okay.
Stacy, why? I want to question.
Okay, got another one?
Question, and maybe you answered this already, but I know that one of the supervisors that are on my team, they had an employee that was promoted maybe about a month ago. She wrote the review on the employee, but you know, he's still sitting in her bucket. Like, I don't know how the compensation will work for that employee that doesn't report to her anymore, that was already promoted to a different department.
Good question, Kathy. They're going to be transferred to whoever the current manager is in People Connect. Is that right? That's how we have it set up.
Yes. Whatever is the date, September 30, Owen, right?
Yes.
If
yes.
it's a month ago, yes.
Yeah, but they'll be with the new manager.
Okay, because I know right now he's with me to approve his review. So I guess like once I approve that, does that, then that's when it goes to his manager?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, okay, thank you so much.
Yes, good question, Jim. You probably cannot see the compensation tile yet, or compensation tile or drop down in People Connect yet. We haven't, what I showed you was just a test instance. We haven't done a full launch yet in People Connect.
Okay, thanks.
Yep. Okay, any other questions before we wrap up? Chat looks good. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, well, we'll be sure to send out the link to all the training resources, including this recording and the slide deck that we went over today. And if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to the compensation team. We're happy to help.